What does American citizens in Gainesville, young men from Africa, and a girl from Taiwan all have in common? They all have cultural values and normalities that they are used to following day in and day out. While these values differ severely, it is clear that influence from a certain background will have a dramatic impact on a person's reactions to different situations. Salutations, my name is Sydney Sinka. I would like to speak about some experiences I had through my collegiate public speaking instruction and how I have reflected upon them. I want to start today with the concept of implicit bias, especially its implications in Gainesville, then move on to a video of boys from Sudan being exposed to American culture, and finally highlight the short film May, the Taiwanese girl. My background in the United States influenced my reactions to each of these topics due to my implicit bias. The concept of implicit bias seemed new to me at first. However, upon further research and a seemingly unreliable test, it is another word for prejudice. Being raised in a very rural and agricultural area, I am used to a very strict routine and a group of people to be around. Most people in my small town are born, raised, go to school, work, and die there. Very few people ever really leave Dade City. Most of these people have very explicit gender roles and belief systems. I experienced implicit bias throughout my high school career in Dade City. As a woman in all advanced classes and highly involved in the community, I was considered an anomaly to the standard woman, what the standard woman should be doing. Thankfully, I've had a very supportive family and was taught I could do anything if I worked hard enough. I experienced implicit bias again when I came to Gainesville. A lot of people consider me to be some dumb farm girl or even racist just because I come from a small town and carry a camo backpack. I know that seems crazy to say, but I was actually stopped on campus by a peer and called a white supremacist because of said camo backpack. These biases are very common these days, and racism falls under a category of implicit bias. In the video of the boys from Africa, this racism is very clear. They are even told not to travel in large groups to avoid having the police called, despite the lack of any illegal activity. The cultural constant of having dark-colored skin and a band of close friends was wrongly perceived as a threat to the American store owners they come in contact with on their journey. The boys even talk about how close everyone back home is to each other, so it makes sense for them to want to be in a large group that emulates their cultural norms of Africa. However, American implicit bias made them conform to the standards of negative past perceptions for the store owners. What was normal for the boys was odd enough to be thought of as a threat to Americans. Another thing I noted as odd from my American perspective was the situation May had with Boy in their short film. Boy clearly is being cordial and tries to offer May a ride on 2 separate occasions. It came across to me that May was being rude to refuse Boy's kind gesture. In my experience in Dade City, it is commonly frowned upon to refuse when someone is being nice to you, especially if they ask more than once. I was unaware of the fact that in many Asian cultures there is a rule of 3 that is used to make females in their culture seem demure and sweet. There is no such rule in American culture as far as I'm aware. This is why the refusal of Boy's gesture seemed off to me. The fact that she wants to appear demure to Boy is actually quite sweet. It seems to me that May might be slightly interested in Boy because she is trying to be what that culture considers desirable. The overriding message that I have noted is that everyone has different cultural and demographic influences. I, here in America, have a very rigid worldview that does not necessarily consider other countries and their traditions. I am not alone in this view, as the boys from Africa were treated as criminals rather than the friendly group that they were. My implicit bias was again highlighted when I saw May and her refusal of Boy's offer. I saw this as rude when in reality it was a cultural normality for her. I will be sure in the future to consider other people's culture.